Of course, we're going to see their own form of furniture in the colonial world. Of course, bringing furniture from the old world is impractical, even if you're the Dutch. So we're going to see slightly different forms. First of all, we're going to see a continued development and continued use of the gate leg table. Now, the gate leg table came up as a lower class table in one of our earlier chapters. Here it's going to be used much more commonly, and it's a very efficient use of space. It's going to speak to the Dutch who are using it. Obviously, you have the drop leg or the drop leaf here, and then the gate leg here. You see the hinge would swing out to support that extra table when and if needed. It's a very efficient space saver, and today we see these gate leg tables sometimes, especially when we get into arts and crafts, with leaves that go down the middle. Now, in Dutch examples, we also frequently see drawers placed in there. They're just trying to make efficient use of anything that they have for storage or general function. We're going to see the kas. And this is a large armoire or wardrobe that is typically 2 doors with a large capital and base, typically with bun feet. And this is for clothing storage at this point. Remember, houses don't have closets yet, so you need some place to keep things, to keep clothes. But you'll notice when we get into the Colonial, it's much, much simpler than what we would see in the Baroque and the Rococo off in Europe. The reason is, of course, we don't have the same craftsmen, we don't have the same materials or the same amount of time. We can't necessarily have someone specialize in just cabinetry at this point. We're also going to see a lot of decoration in what's called grisaille, which is very similar to sgraffito, which we talked about back in the Italian Renaissance. But here we're painting in monochrome. In other words, black and white and gray. Now, why would you do that? Well, grisaille actually is an interesting technique because they would have been familiar with it from many of the very famous Baroque artists of Northern Europe who use a grisaille technique as their underpainting, and then they glaze color over it so that you can look through that colored glaze and you still see the shadows that are created by the grisaille. Here, they just get rid of that color, and they're using the grisaille as a decorative form. Now, in bridal cupboards, which are very, very common, you would see something with pomegranates or birds or other elements, other visual shorthand for fertility, for reproduction. In other cases, we see fruit and things that would give us a sense of, well, both fertility, but good fortune. And then we have the development of the Hackensack. And this is very, very similar to a china cupboard. We have 2 levels. They generally come apart. The upper level would have shelves and glass doors. Of course, that's what you need if you're going to show off your china and whatever else you have. The bottom generally consists of drawers and doors. So we'll have a layer of drawers here and then a layer of doors. Typically speaking, your flatware, etc., is going to be up in the drawers, and then your table linens will be down here. Your china is all up in the top. And in this case, you'll notice we have that sort of seashell shape, something that we're familiar with from the Baroque, Rococo, and Neoclassical. And of course, that's going to come over to the New World as well, although here we see the whole thing very, very simplified. At the top, we have these linen fold motifs being used below the cornice, just kind of drawing out a little bit of architectural detail in the whole piece. And finally, we have the cupboard bed. Now, these are going to be common, especially in Northern Europe, and then when you get into the Shetlands and you get into Scandinavia, it's a very efficient way of doing things. What you do is you get in the box and you sleep, and hopefully no one saws it in half. I might be mixing magic and colonial Dutch, one or the other. But what happens is you get in, you sleep, it's very, very efficient. Now, initially, they build it to keep out the quote-unquote night air, which was felt to cause illness. But in fact, what they've done is basically use their body heat to warm up a very small space, just barely big enough for the 2 people or the 1 person that is sleeping in it. And they've taken down that height from what we would expect from for example, our 4-post bed. And instead of curtains, we're using wood, which is going to hold that air in a little bit more. Typically, these would be in the living room. They oftentimes didn't have bedrooms in their colonial homes. So this might be sitting against a wall or in a corner in the living room and allow people to sleep without being disturbed while other things are going on, and also without taking up an entire room to basically do nothing.